In 9 weeks, she went from stage 4 to stage 0.
Wow.
And then has taken a 10-year journey with no cancers, never come back. It's jaw-dropping.
Renowned physician and scientist, Dr. William Li.
Author of over 100 scientific publications.
His groundbreaking work has impacted more than 70 diseases.
Cancer, diabetes,
Heart disease, obesity.
Our sense of identity, our own brand, is very, very connected to our gut bacteria, our gut health. Amazingly, P9 causes the gut, the body, to secrete its own GLP-1.
Wow.
He says your gut could be the key to a longer, healthier life.
It ramped up the desired immune response to the flu vaccine by 22 times. Now you get the whole shebang. This is the power of food as medicine. It's the totality of all the little steps that we make that get us to our end destination. It's not a single magic pill.
Dr. William Li, what a treat to see you, man. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've been such an influence on me and my personal health journey. You're in my new book, and I've been a big fan and read both your books. So it was Eat to Beat Disease, right? And Eat to Beat Your Diet. Mm-hmm. Longevity is in the zeitgeist right now, right? So there's a lot of books, a lot of people talking about longevity. Certainly this is not a new human interest, but it's more in the public conversation than ever before. Given that food is such a central part of what you think about, I'm curious about the relationship between food and specifically the gut and longevity and how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, well, so, I come at everything from my own pillars, my own foundation, which is I'm a scientist. I study blood vessels, angiogenesis, blood vessels, how they grow, genesis, and I'm a doctor. Internal medicine. So I think about the whole body, the whole person. I dove into gut health as a cancer researcher because some years ago, we became aware that if you had cancer and you were being treated with the state-of-the-art, most advanced cancer therapy, which is called immunotherapy, this is like 2017, 2018, that if you were in that situation with cancer being treated with this approach, that if you lacked a certain gut bacteria, you are unlikely to respond to the treatment. And if you had a certain bacteria, you were likely to respond, and not just likely to respond, you were likely to have a complete response, which means that your own immune system would figure out how to dry erase all the cancer away. So this is not like, I don't want to have leaky gut. This is like a matter of life and death. And so that was what attracted me into start studying these different types of bacteria in my own way.
And if I remember correctly, this was also quite a kind of personal journey for you, because I think your mother had brain cancer. Is that right?
No, not brain cancer. My mother actually had endometrial cancer. So this is the story. And by the way, my mother, I just had dinner with her the other night. She's doing completely well, but 10 years ago,
wow.
All right, she was 80 and had endometrial cancer, which is a cancer of the lining of the uterus. She had surgery, but they didn't get everything. It spread everywhere in her body. She had stage 4. And at the age of 80, and she's like a frail, older Asian lady, and her oncologist basically took me aside and said, I don't think we should be treating her. Her body's not going to tolerate chemo. Why don't you take her on a cruise and enjoy some good time with her? And I looked at this guy like straight in the eye, and I'm like, do you know what I do for a living?
Right.
I eat this stuff for breakfast. Like, I take the impossible and try to figure out how to make it possible. So we adjusted my mother's gut microbiome. We got her on immunotherapy. We sequenced her tumor. We did all the stuff that is possible now to do. Yeah. And we got her on immunotherapy, and with the right gut microbiome, she became a complete responder, which means she never got chemo. She just got a touch of radiation, but she had 3 infusions only, 20 minutes apiece of an immunotherapy, 3 weeks apart. All right. So in 9 weeks, she went from stage 4 to stage 0, end stage to reversed all cancer.
Oh my God.
And then has taken a 10-year journey with no cancer. It's never come back. She doesn't see an oncologist anymore. Can't even remember she had cancer, to be honest with you.
That's amazing. So you were treating with a immunotherapy pharmaceutical, essentially, but in conjunction were you using a prebiotic to feed certain bacteria, or were you supplementing with it? Yeah.
We pulled out all stops.
Yeah.
We use food as medicine.
Yeah.
We use food with that were prebiotic to be able to help feed her existing gut microbiome. We measured her gut microbiome to see if she had enough of the good stuff and realized that we could go further. We gave her probiotics to grow the good stuff. We removed harmful things from her diet that might impact on her gut microbiome. And I have to say, subsequently, I have seen so many people, like well over a dozen people, go from stage 4 to stage 0. I can tell you, I was invited to give a keynote in London earlier in the summer, and that was what I was invited to talk about, the transformation of cancer therapy. We are now at a point where it is possible to go from stage 4 to stage 0. And the question is, what are we learning about that? How do you do it? And what are the clues of how to do it more often and better for people? And the gut microbiome keeps on coming up as a bullseye we got to hit.
Yeah, so interesting. I think kind of most famously, I believe it was President Carter got treated with Keytruda, right?
Yep, which is exactly what my mother got.
Okay. And that the specific bacteria that often gets referred to in conjunction with Keytruda was Akkermansia, if I remember correctly.
So we didn't know that in Carter's time.
Yeah.
But this is part of the research I was involved with. And, I have to say, I believe I'm the person, because that took this onto podcasting and social media. And now, of course, everybody knows about it. And there's actually a probiotic that's developed on it, which, by the way, I think it's a pretty decent product, because I've used it in cancer patients and measured it to really take a look at response and take. And it's easy to kind of like get carried away with products, but hey, you know what? It's out there, and that's phenomenal as an innovation. But Akkermansia is one of them. But Akkermansia is coming back again in a number of different contexts that I think your listeners will be fascinated by: weight loss, metabolic health, and longevity.
Okay, well, so you teased that. How would Akkermansia be involved in longevity? I mean, obviously, if it's helping to reverse cancer, that's a very direct way that it might be, but is it having kind of impacts on long-term metabolic health or staving off neurodegenerative disease? What's going on there?
So first of all, you can't go anywhere today for anybody who's health conscious and not get them to acknowledge that good gut health is important for overall health, right? So dive a little bit deeper. What is good gut health? It has to do with our 39 trillion gut microbes that live in our gut, mostly in the lower third of the gut, in the colon, but actually also starting in the mouth and the gums and in our tongues. We start realizing, hey, the mouth is also the gut, and the gut microbiome also lives in the mouth. So, but we wouldn't be able to know anything more specifically about that if we didn't have the ability to take a swab, go to the lab, identify the organisms or the populations of organisms, and come up with numbers and graphs and figures to say, just like a blood test, you can do a poop test and you can get some sense of what your microbiome is doing. Yeah. Okay. So this was the breakthrough that I think has allowed us to examine what is the role of the gut microbiome in longevity. And an amazing study that I'm really, really dumbfounded by, struck by, is applying this technology of looking at the gut microbiome across the adult lifespan, health span. And a group in Italy, in Bologna, actually looked at adults 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 to 100, and older than 100, 100 to 114. Wow. So this is called super agers or super centenarians. The word centenarian is really referring to someone who's gotten to be 100, but you can actually get to more than 100. By the way, as a side note, do you know how many people today on this planet are 100 years old or older? Give me a number, not a percentage.
Just a guess.
Yeah, take a wild guess of the number of people.
I'll say 20,000.
722,000 people today are aged 100 or older. Huge amount of people. And this means, okay, we live in a planet of 8 billion people, but this means that it is possible to live to 100, not as a onesie or a twosie, but in fact, there are larger and larger numbers overall, if you add them all up, that are getting there. And by the way, these people who are 100 today, they're probably not wearing an implantable glucose monitor. They're probably not, self-tracking. They're probably not getting a subscription. They're probably not getting a subscription to supplements. Yeah. And so, what's really interesting is when technology and testing intersects with real life, and that's my approach to looking at longevity. So, what's interesting about this study from Italy, I'm telling you, is that they looked at the gut microbiome of adults, and they're specifically saying, are there any standout bacteria in the microbiome in people that get to 100 or older? Are there any like whoa, these bacteria are like so high in these people, like they've got to be doing something. Okay. And in fact, they found 4 of them.
Okay.
4 bacteria that are standouts in people that are super centenarians.
Particular strains.
Okay.
What are they?
All right. So, and by the way, I didn't know these bacteria until I started to really dive into this. So this is
there's
just,
like on a good day, like 1,000 different species of bacteria, something like that.
Many more than that. Plus viruses, plus bacteria,
and
plus
archaea,
archaea and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the point is that, and again, like I hope anybody who's watching or listening to this understands we're at the tip of the iceberg. So this is not a conclusion. This is sort of like this is an appetizer of knowledge. This is not dessert. All right. And so what we know is these 4 bacteria stand out. I hadn't even heard about some of these before. One of them is called Odoribacter. Okay. Odoribacter. Okay. And what it does is that it actually boosts your immune system to fight certain bacteria. And so what's interesting is about this bacteria, another one's called Oscillobacter, like oscillation. Oscillobacter improves your lipid profile, lowers LDL, bad cholesterol, raises good cholesterol, manages your triglycerides, helps make insulin sensitivity so your glucose is a little bit better managed. Metabolic bacteria. Isn't that interesting in people that are super agers? Also have this standout bacteria that's really giving them a unfair advantage metabolically. Cool, right? That's an important clue. And then there's another one that is called Kristinacella bacteria, okay? Not as well known, but it improves brain health, improves vascular health, helps blood vessels get better. And again, these are not all that well studied, these bacteria, but I think it's time to start diving into these things to understand it. That's the 3rd one. And the 4th one is our old friend Akkermansia muciniphila. Wow. This bacteria that's helpful for anybody of any age who's got cancer actually is a standout in people who are super agers. And it actually is a metabolic gatekeeper, helps you regulate glucose and insulin sensitivity better. Akkermansia also seems to be protective against brain disease. So it seems to support cognitive health, which is really important. And then with regard to metabolism, this might be some new information that I'm not sure if you had heard about this. Have you heard about P9? P as in Peter, 9?
No.
Okay. Sounds like a handgun, but it's not. P9 is actually a component. It's a particle on Akkermansia. So Akkermansia is a bacteria. Bacteria have shells, like a beetle. So P9 is a part of the shell. So here's how, and I'm going to tell you what P9 does in a second, but here's how it was discovered. Akkermansia is a bacteria. It's got to be alive in order to be able to have benefit. Well, what they did is in the lab, they figured out how to shatter Akkermansia into 1 million pieces. Guess what? Akkermansia still seems to have a lot of benefit for the metabolism, even if it's dead. So they were sifting through all the particles. So they looked at P9 and they said, what does P9 do on Akkermansia that helps with metabolism? Amazingly, P9 causes the gut, the body, to secrete its own GLP-1.
Wow.
It's jaw-dropping. GLP-1, of course, being the
Yeah.
the hormone that is the basis for the prescription weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, and it's this big phenomenon that's going on in health with people chasing after it. And it's amazing that part of your gut microbiome does the same thing.
This little bit, this bacterial wall segment or something of particle of Akkermansia essentially stimulates the endogenous production of glucagon, GLP-1. Yeah.
Correct.
That is crazy.
Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing. So let me ask you about the mechanism of action associated with these different strains of bacteria. Is it the bacteria themselves, or in this case, the P9 itself? Or is it the kind of postbiotics or the metabolites that are created by the bacteria, the famous ones being kind of short chain fatty acids, et cetera, that seem to be responsible for all of these different upregulations of various systems, immune health, metabolic health, insulin sensitivity, et cetera?
Great question. And in fact, that is one of the central questions is it the bacteria? Is it their products? Is it some other influence that they have on their neighboring bacteria or neighboring cells that's actually generating the benefit? You know what? I mean, this is really kind of like this is the
MacGyver shit.
The MacGyver. Well, I mean, but this is actually the centerpiece that scientists dive at. We don't know yet, and I think that this is the fun part. So I don't know the answer to your question, but I will tell you that the short chain fatty acids made by many healthy gut bacteria, acetate, butyrate, propionate. Okay, these wind up drifting off made by the bacteria, drift off into the bloodstream and work everywhere else in the body. Pretty amazing to know. So we do believe that the short chain fatty acids, the postbiotics, are part of the benefits of these 4 bacteria that have been discovered. But what's amazing is that if you take a look just at those 4, and they all help with the things that we know are important. They help your health defenses. They help immunity, lowering inflammation. They help your metabolism. They help your blood supply, good circulation. They support and nurture all those aspects we know are important for health at any age. And sometimes we forget about how important those factors are as we get into our elderly age. We just kind of drop them off I don't know, they're just old and weak. No, actually, this tells you that it's possible to get to those far reaches, the horizon, with that type of metabolic, anti-inflammatory, pro-vascular support that we actually need to. And, arguably, the best way to get to longevity is to avoid those diseases that'll take you out early.
I think I don't know what this statistic is exactly, but I was shocked to read it that if you make it to 80, the chances that you'll make it to 90 are actually quite surprisingly high.
Yeah.
So, but I was looking at a image of the colon the other day. That's what I do in my spare time, right? And you see that so many of the systems of the body cluster right around it. I mean, you have just on the other side of that one cell thick layer, that epithelium, you have the bloodstream. So you have the circulatory system, you have the immune system is sitting right there. And then you have the nervous system. You have nerves right there that are sending, bi-directional messages up into your brain.
Yeah.
I mean, it does make sense that everything converges there. And so there's every reason in the world to take care of it.
You ever see those pictures in Africa of the watering hole where all the different species come together?
Yeah.
And they get, they might not get along normally, but they all, when it comes to water, they all are figuring out how to interact with one another and make room for each other. And yeah, I mean, I think that the gut is one of those. And by the way, have you heard of the new organ? We're considering an organ that's been discovered that's also all around the gut called the interstitium.
So I think you've well established how important the gut is and the various roles that it plays to enhance our longevity and our health span, candidly, because we're experiencing this distension of morbidity here in the United States and everywhere in the Western world, where the last 20 years of our life basically suck in many cases, which is, we're on these cocktails of pharmaceuticals for decades of, and they're really never addressing root cause. What are some of the primary culprits, the inputs that degrade the health of the gut?
I think that we do know that too much sugar can damage your gut microbiome, just like it damages your metabolism. It's overwhelming, and it can be damaging. I think we know that too much red meat, like a super carnivore type of diet for a long period of time, can alter the bacteria in a pretty dramatic way. That's not to say you shouldn't have any meat. It's just that to saying that like a super meat heavy diet all the time can alter the microbiome. We know that emulsifiers, thickeners in foods, okay. Do you eat yogurt?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get low fat or regular yogurt?
Actually, I've been on the non-fat yogurt kick, and this is separate. I can tell you why. It's just because I'm trying to get bolus of protein without too many calories from fat.
Got it. Now, because you're a very, very thoughtful person, you've probably chosen a low-fat yogurt that in the ingredient label doesn't contain a lot of emulsifiers.
That's right.
A lot of low-fat yogurts, when you pull out the fat, it collapses into a thick puddle, okay, that's not very appealing. And so some of those products, the manufacturers add emulsifiers, carrageenan, polysorbate 80, you name it, to thicken it back up to give you the mouthfeel of whole yogurt. And the whole purpose of actually getting low-fat yogurt is not to impact your lipids, right? You don't want whole fat, saturated fat. It turns out that kind of low-fat yogurt, your cholesterol doesn't go down, it goes up. And the reason it goes up is because you damage your gut microbiome with these emulsifiers, these additives that damage the gut microbiome. And because the gut microbiome helps to control your lipid metabolism, you've actually screwed up, right idea, wrong solution.
Right. It's incredible that we've outsourced so much function to a non-human cell inside of our own body. It's really just quite amazing, the interconnectedness of it. There's almost something quasi-spiritual to the idea.
Well, it's interesting because it gives us a better appreciation of what it takes for us to have equilibrium and homeostasis and peace within ourselves. I mean, if you really think about it, like, okay, this has happened to all of us. You wake up in the morning and you're basically doing okay. At some point later in the day, you're like, your gut's crampy and gassy and you're just not that comfortable, and go to the bathroom every now and then or whatever. Listen, that's our gut microbiome crying out for help. They're sending out distress signals.
Right.
Okay. The signal flares are going off. Like something's going on there that isn't good. They need some help from us. And so this is like, I think everybody's can relate to that aspect, and it just shows you how important and how interconnected who we are and how we feel with our gut is. And by the way, when you've got that crampy gut kind of discomfort, it's hard to be in a good mood.
Yeah.
Right? You're kind of irritated. You're like short-tempered.
Yeah. Not going to make great decisions.
Impatience, not going to make great decisions. Yeah. And you think it's just because, I don't feel that great. But actually, our gut bacteria, through the nerves that you just mentioned that are distributed throughout our and wrapping around our intestines, it's our bacteria not sending the right signals to our brain. That gut-brain axis is messed with in some way that's dysfunctional. So our brain's not working well either. So again, it's sort of our sense of self, our sense of identity, our own brand, okay, is very, very connected to our gut bacteria, our gut health.
Yeah. And some of those key neurotransmitters that enhance mood and that are important for mood regulation seem to be at least either made in the gut or stimulated by certain bacteria than to make them in other parts of the body.
I worked on this as well. There's one bacteria called Lactobacillus reuteri,
right,
L. reuteri, that is a healthy gut bacteria. Before the antibiotic revolution in the 1930s, it was pretty much in everybody's gut. And then since then, It's been etsy-ketsy. Sometimes it's present, sometimes it's not present, but it used to be present everywhere. And now that more research has been done on what the role of Lactobacillus reuteri is, among many things it does, healing, lowering inflammation, improving immunity, lowering the growth, like suppressing the growth of colon tumors and breast tumors. One of the amazing things it does is it is very clearly been shown in research studies that it text messages your brain, this bacteria in the gut text messages our brain to release oxytocin. Oxytocin being one of those brain hormones. It's a social hormone that is absolutely critical for the pleasure that we feel in the right social circumstances and physiological circumstances. So oxytocin is the signal your brain releases when you have a kiss. And oxytocin is what your brain shoots out like 10,000-fold for a short few seconds when you have an orgasm as well. So little bacteria actually is in charge of doing some of this stuff. I mean, it's not the only thing, but it actually has this role for social hormone. And as it relates to food, it's really, really interesting that some yogurts have Lactobacillus reuteri, that sourdough bread, before we off camera, you were talking about like making sourdough bread.
Yeah.
And you have an ancient starter.
We have an ancient starter from my wife's mom. I mean, not ancient. I wouldn't want to call her ancient on camera, but it's been around a couple of decades now.
It's like a legacy starter.
Yes.
An ancestral starter. The Lactobacillus reuteri is what gives sourdough bread the tanginess of it. Parmigiano Reggiano. Yeah. The original types, those gigantic big wheels that you find, that's a starter bacteria.
Amazing.
So you can actually get a little bit of Lactobacillus reuteri from your foods. Now, I'm not telling people to eat a ton of cheese, got lots of salt and saturated fats. I'm not telling people to eat a ton of sourdough bread. Our research is discovering that there are some healthy properties in some of the foods that we like.
Yeah. So we have these beneficial bacteria like Lactobacillus reuteri or Lactobacillus bulgaricus is one that I'm familiar with, other bifidobacterium, etc., Akkermansia. What do we want to feed these bacteria such that they are efficient and friendly?
I think that the common conclusion that all the researchers have agreed on is that these bacteria love to eat polyphenols. So polyphenols coming from colorful foods. So eat the rainbow and you get all the different polyphenols that are coming out, that's actually really beneficial. And these bacteria also love another prebiotic, which is dietary fiber. And dietary fiber is also present in mostly plant-based foods. Yet another reason why eating a plant-forward, plant-based diet is going to be healthy for you is that you're also feeding those 39 trillion bacteria in your body the food that they actually need.
So we actually have some food in front of us. And for those who are just listening, I encourage you to watch the video too. But, for example, so there's a pomegranate right here. I harvested this from our property in Topanga. It's kind of right at the end of pomegranate season right now. So that's a colorful fruit, but there's also some pretty powerful polyphenols in there. What would you have to say about pomegranate?
Yeah, can I pick it up?
Please.
All right. So first of all, a pomegranate is about the size of an apple. Like they come bigger. They're red like an apple. They've got this little kind of crown, king's crown at the top of it. So for those of you who are listening, I'm describing what I'm holding in my hand. It's a little heavier than an apple. And the reason it's heavier is because it's packed with seeds, these tiny little ruby red seeds that are like crunchy in the middle. And there's like a little skin around it and like juice that's injected just inside that skin. So you can imagine, and I think most people have seen pomegranate seeds. You can sprinkle them in salads. There's a lot of Middle Eastern dishes that are made with pomegranate seeds. And of course, you can have the juice. Now, that juice of pomegranate is loaded with bioactives, including one called elagitannins. And elagitannins, by the way, do good things for us, like most plant-based bioactives. In this case, in the context of our gut bacteria, we know that the pomegranate bioactive, the polyphenol, also called the elagitannins, when you eat them, They stimulate our gut to secrete mucus. Now, people go, oh, it's disgusting, mucus. No. You want gut mucus.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. What's mucus? It's slippery and slimy. Well, that's actually how our poop is able to move down our colon to get out. And if you've ever been constipated, or dehydrated, and you get constipated, that without being able to have without a slippery, slidey way to get out, like you are stuck, and it's not comfortable. And so that's normal mucus, and the pomegranate juice and seeds, okay, but it's really the polyphenols in the juice actually make your gut make more of that healthy mucus. Now, Akkermansia is one of those healthy gut bacteria that actually loves to eat mucus. It eats mucus. That's part of its food. In fact, the mucus is part of its name. So Akkermansia is the first name, the genus. The species is called Muciniphila.
I never put that together.
Mucusphilia, mucus loving, Akkermansia. All right.
There you go.
So that's what it is. And so by eating pomegranates or drinking pomegranate juice, you wind up secreting more mucus, healthy mucus, and the Akkermansia will naturally grow. It's a fertilizer for Akkermansia.
There's also this compound that I think certain people have this bacteria, not everybody, that actually takes the ellagitannins and there's a bacteria that essentially uses the ellagitannins and metabolizes it into this compound called urolithin A, which has gotten to be popular as a supplement, but many people who have that bacteria actually don't need it. And studies seem to suggest that particular compound is very useful for kind of mitophagy, essentially like kind of breaking down dysfunctional mitochondria and helping with mitochondrial function. So
yeah. And in fact, it's one of the few supplements where I've seen pretty convincing human evidence that it actually works in the way that it's supposed to work, or the way that people talk about it working. For people who are not familiar with the topic, I mean, mitochondria are the little powerhouses, the little energy, the little nuclear power batteries in our cells, and we need them to have energy. In fact, without mitochondria, we wouldn't make it 1 second. All right, like we'd be instantly like keel over. So thank goodness for mitochondria. And as we age, mitochondria kind of slow down. We get fewer of them. They're not as powerful. It's kind of like an old AAA battery, and in your voice recorder, whatever you use batteries for, the light dims. And so so one of the interesting efforts to really support health and health span is to give you more energy by helping to support and produce more mitochondria. And this is where this urolithin idea comes in. Could we actually power up our cells, and in the interest of having longer, more energetic lifespan?
So we have some other foods here, and we might not get to everything, but a natural bridge would be to some walnuts. And we've been eating nuts as a species for a very, very long time, so we evolved in relationship to them. So I assume that we have some adaptive mechanisms for receiving some of the macronutrients and micronutrients and phytochemicals that are in nuts. Walnuts, I also believe, also do have a polyphenol. I think they also have ellagitannins in them. But what would you say just about walnuts? And I think there's some pistachios in there. What's your general feeling about
I'm picking up this jar. It's a pretty heavy jar.
Yep.
I mean, tree nuts are quite amazing for health. Great source of protein. So people who are, especially people who are vegetarian or vegan, I mean, like nuts are a great way of actually getting your protein in. It's got good fat, healthy fat, called monounsaturated fatty acids, which actually help to overall right size your lipids. Like it helps to lower HDL, harmful cholesterol, and it's loaded with dietary fiber. As anybody who's crunched a nut knows, it's fibery,
I can smell this actually. And this is our sauerkraut. So we make that at home here in a crock. It's so easy. It's just really cabbage and salt and water. That's it. But it's actually quite unique because this is a prebiotic, a probiotic, and a postbiotic in one jar on some level. So
yeah, no, I mean, I love that you brought that. So what's interesting about fermentation which is a 1,000-year-old art, practiced in almost every culture, is that it takes fresh food and it turns it into something else, and it makes it last a lot longer, and it gives you different health benefits as well. All right. So take something good for you and make it even better later on. It's got the bioactives and the polyphenols from cabbage itself, like the isothiocyanates and the sulforaphanes and the glucophorins, that's good stuff. And by the way, because it's cut up, you've already released the myrosinase with the enzyme in the cells that actually help to convert the sulfur-containing bioactives into more products that are good for you. So just making sauerkraut by chopping it up actually does something. And then it's got the prebiotics, the polyphenols, and the dietary fiber from the cabbage. And then because it's fermented by bacteria, healthy bacteria that wind up out-competing and becoming dominant in your bacteria. Now you're eating it. Now it's a probiotic. It's like Mother Nature's probiotic. Doesn't come in a capsule. You don't have to subscribe to it every month. All right. You can put it on your plate and you can enjoy it. And then because these bacteria have been doing their thing in the fermentation vat from which sauerkraut is made, they release their short-chain fatty acids. So you get the postbiotic as well. So, it's the pre, pro, and postbiotics all in one. That's like a big upside for sauerkraut.
Yeah, it's a trifecta. So kind of flipping over here to another jar, this is, you referenced this before. So these are some seed crackers that my wife Skylar makes. And, the base is this kind of legacy sourdough starter. So there's this kind of a similar process going on here with lactic acid fermentation. My wife takes the sourdough starter and then adds a bunch of different kinds of seeds, chia and flax, particularly, and makes these kind of seed crackers. There's like really good protein in there. Again, good fiber. But I know you haven't tried these because these are a little bit more bespoke or esoteric. But I think you could probably speak to it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, actually, could I try a small piece of one?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
I don't want a giant one. Just like give me a break off a little end. Or... All right. Great. This is a really great cracker. Kudos to Skylar for making it.
Yeah.
I'd love to get the recipe.
Sure.
Okay. Chia seeds.
Yeah.
Great source of the plant world's version of omega-3s. Actually, it's a precursor. ALA, aminolevulinic acid. When we eat that, our bodies convert that ALA, aminolevulinic acid from chia seeds, into omega-3s. So it's kind of like having the precursor to the supplement you might actually have. You got to eat a lot to actually get adequate amounts of omega-3s. But listen, every little bit counts, and there's fiber in here as well. And I love the taste of it. I love the idea of taking good whole ingredients and finding some recipe to make it into something more. And by the way, so I sometimes speak to people who ask me, well, should we get rid of all processed foods? And what I try to do is to say, let's try to define processed versus not processed, because by taking the raw whole ingredients like the chia seeds and the sourdough starter and putting them together and baking them, I suppose, or together to create this incredibly delicious cracker. Okay, you've made a process. You've processed it. That's not ultra processed, but it's processed. Now, if you license this recipe to the companies that makes potato chips, and they made this, and you found it in every airport. Okay, but you could easily ultra process by having a big machine in a factory extrude this stuff and then package it and then start adding their own ingredients and preservatives.
Yeah.
That's ultra processed. So let's define processed versus ultra processed, because the processed food, which is what I'm holding in my hand here and crunching on, absolutely delicious and absolutely healthy as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that to make sure we're
important.
distinguishing processed versus ultra processed.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. All right, moving on. So these are sprouts that are made from little tiny organic broccoli seeds. And we have quite a ample bowl of them here.
So if you haven't seen a broccoli sprout, they are, let's see how we describe it. They're like an inch maybe. They are white, colored, like the long part is white, and then they have a little seed at the end of it, little brown seed, and a little green leaf on the other end. So just like you might think about a seed that sprouts with a little green leaf at the very end. Ultimately, if you put that in the ground, or it would actually turn into a whole broccoli. They lower inflammation. They cut off the blood supply to cancer. They activate your metabolism by triggering thermogenesis with your brown fat. So they can actually literally flick the switch to your brown fat, which then lights up mitochondria, lots of mitochondria. By the way, do you know why brown fat is brown?
I think because of the iron content in the mitochondria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to create heat, like for thermogenesis, brown fat are packed with mitochondria. All right, and because mitochondria have iron in them, and iron gets oxidized as a normal cellular process. If you took a bunch of iron nails and stuck them out on the porch, they turn brown. So that's why brown fat is brown. But when you trigger that, you'll actually get heat generated. And to generate that heat requires energy. And what brown fat does is draw the fuel away from your harmful excess white fat, like your visceral fat. So good fat fights bad fat. Brown fat burns down white fat. And sulforaphanes from broccoli can actually do that. The other thing that sulforaphanes can do is actually trigger your immune system, ramp up your immune system for greater immune strength. There was a study done at the University of North Carolina where they were taking young, healthy college students, and it was in the fall, so they were getting flu shots, and they recruited subjects out of that population of people getting flu shots, and they divided up their group so that half of them wound up, in addition to the flu shot, or the flu vaccine, they wound up getting a tall cup of a broccoli sprout shake. And they drew blood at the beginning, they drew blood at the end, they did nasal swabs to look at flu virus and everything else. And one of the ways that you tell the flu virus is working is so you can look at your immune cells. Vaccines work by triggering your T cells, which are a part of your immune system, to be trained to go after the flu virus. And so you should have more of those trained super soldiers, these T cells after you get a vaccine. Okay. So what they did is they actually drew the blood. Everybody got the flu vaccine, and technically it wasn't the flu shot. They had a nasal spray for flu. And what they found in the kids, the young people who actually got the broccoli sprout shake, that it ramped up the desired immune response to the flu vaccine by 22 times. Wow. Broccoli sprout
22
shake.
22 times?
22 times.
Yeah.
And so this is the power of food as medicine.
That is so interesting. My God. I mean, I've heard you say this before, but that, our cells that are sensitive to the outside world, right? And they have receptors on them. And those receptors evolved in relationship to food, to the signals provided by food, not the signals provided by drugs. And I'm certainly not trying to vilify good pharmacology, but over hundreds of thousands of years of Homo sapien development and then millions of years of hominid development prior to that, we co-evolved with food such that these receptors are sensitive to certain kinds of bioactive compounds like sulforaphane, et cetera. And it's just a kind of I think a framing that not everybody is thinking about.
Yeah, because it's not like we don't treat foods like dietary supplements or drugs.
Right.
Foods are part of our own human ecosystem that we've coexisted with, and we inherently know, and our bodies know exactly what to do with the stuff that's more natural. By the way, have you seen the research that has been coming out? It's been trickling out over the last couple of years. Researchers who are studying chimpanzees and apes are discovering that when they are injured or wounded, They will specifically go forage for specific leaves of specific plants, and they will chew them up, okay? And then they will rub the plant on their wound to heal it.
Wow. Okay, so we're at our last little sample here, and this is just a sort of thin little canister. And this, of course, is green tea.
It's actually, speaking of the receptors and the interactions that we have with our food, and what you've actually handed me is like a beautiful example of very delicate tea leaves. This is Camellia sinensis. Is the tea grows in tropical environments. They are picked at certain seasons. If you pick tea leaves early in the season, like in the spring, the caffeine levels are actually very, very low. If you're sensitive to caffeine but you still want tea, get spring picked tea, or sometimes they call it white tea.
Huh.
The reason is caffeine, made by the tea plant, is a natural pesticide. So when and later in the summer, when you get that second crop of tea leaves being picked, now in the tropical environment, you got a lot of bugs buzzing around the tea. Now it really needs to repel those critters, so it makes a lot of caffeine. All right.
So interesting.
And so that's another interest. So it's kinder, gentler tea in the spring pick later. And now here's the thing about tea. You've handed me a tin with loose leaf tea, which is the kind of tea I personally drink. Most people, though, drink tea in a tea bag.
Yeah.
And if you're going to drink tea in a tea bag, you'll get polyphenols from the tea, the catechins from the tea. But a lot of people don't realize that how you steep the tea with a tea bag matters. You want to dunk the tea bag, okay? And you want to dunk it up and down, because otherwise, just by passive diffusion, you're not going to get all the polyphenols. By dunking it, you're actually forcing the weight of the tea shaking around in the water to squeeze out more of the polyphenols.
Pretend you're Michael Jordan. Keep dunking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you the caveat that I actually have today, and it justifies why I've always liked loose leaf tea, is we're beginning to realize that many of the tea bags aren't just made out of paper, but in fact they're sprayed with plastic on the outside to prevent them from ripping. And when you dunk a tea bag to make tea, one study showed up to 1 billion microplastic particles, nanoplastics, can come into the cup of tea that you're drinking.
Yeah.
1 billion.
I find it to be much more gratifying to, make tea from loose leaf tea.
Yeah. But when you have loose leaf tea like that, one of the things that you get the polyphenols, but what you don't get the most out of, but if you want really max benefit, all the polyphenols plus the dietary fiber from the tea leaf. It's a plant. It's a plant leaf. Okay. You want to get matcha.
Yeah.
Matcha is basically similar to these dried tea leaves, but they pulverize them into a powder. Now you get the dietary fiber from the leaf, and you get the polyphenols from the tea. Now you get the whole shebang. So this is sort of like we just stepped up, like getting the health benefits.
Yeah. And that's where you can do those kind of Japanese ceremonies with the whisk and the whole thing.
Sure. I mean, listen, people who are fascinated and really love that, it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, these ceremonies. But I think tea in today's world has been demystified, and you don't have to. It's not a sacred thing. Enjoy the tea every day. My great uncle, by the way, who lived to 104, I asked him what are the 3 things that he did that, like, look, listen, I was there for his 100th birthday party, and a few days before he turned 100 and had his party, I sat him down and I'm saying, please tell me what are your secrets to longevity? Okay, he wasn't yet 100, and he looked at me, he's like, I don't have like a formula for you. I don't know what there's a secret. But I'll give you 3 things that I think have helped me. Number 1, he said, I don't hold on to anger. I let things roll off my shoulders. Like, nothing's that important. All right. I always remember that. Number 2, he said, I drink green tea every day. He lived at the base of a tea mountain in China. And so he would get up in the morning and give his tea, and he'd be sipping his tea all day long, like right within 100 feet or 100 yards from where they were picking the tea. So it was always fresh and everything else. And he knew everything to know there is to know about where they got the tea. And I don't know, he probably drank easily 6 to 10 cups a day because he was sipping it all day long. He didn't sit to chug his tea. He sipped it and just kept on refilling. The third thing he said is that every morning he'd get up at 4 a.m. and he would walk up a series of a mountain path to get to the tea garden where he would sip his tea with his buddies, his other 90, 100-year-old buddies. All right. And he was like, he would be exercising. He'd stay in motion. So think about it. Exercise, diet, good mindset. Community, right? Like there's no, I mean, that's the secret, I think. You know, like, I mean, so one of the things is I get deeper and deeper and deeper into my longevity research. What I realize is that the depth of science is awesome. I mean, like we're getting into depths that we have never seen before, like those 4 bacteria thing that I was talking to you about. But at the end of the day, when you pull back far enough, these are readily achievable actions that we can take every day that add up every single year that we live. And, you know, we all want to live as long as we possibly can, you know, but you want to live a good quality of life along the way.
Yeah, so important. I want to just hover over tea for one last minute because you mentioned that as the white tea matures to green tea, as the tea plant, it generates more caffeine as a protective mechanism. There's this whole kind of emerging field of study around, I think, what's called xenohormetins, right? So xenohormetins is what I've heard. It's essentially hormesis as applied to plants. And so, for example, similar to caffeine, for example, resveratrol in the skins of grapes were a protective mechanism or protective compound that grapes developed to protect itself from fungus.
Yeah,
and then
the noble rot.
And then winemakers ended up kind of stressing particular species of grapes more and more for taste purposes. But then, you know, we kind of landed on resveratrol as a potential polyphenol compound that might have some longevity benefits. But I think what is really interesting with this idea of kind of stressed plants is that plants, they don't really have an immune system the way we have an immune system, but they do develop and produce these compounds that are protective. And that when then we eat those or drink those, in the case of the tea, those protective mechanisms are then conferred on us.
Yeah, and we get the benefit too.
We get the benefit too. And it just, again, underscores kind of this interrelationship that we have with nature and with plants. And I find it to be just like truly fascinating. So
yeah, no, I mean, what's good for the goose and is good for the gander and the human and the plant world. I think, as we have conversations about, how to actually do better for our planet, and the whole examination of agriculture and how we approach agriculture, which then goes to what kind of foods we eat and how affordable they are, everything. I mean, I think that this perspective of the interrelationship between the plant world and the human world and the animal world and the human world as well. I mean, I think it's something that keeps us grounded in terms of what we're doing. It's pretty profound, and I think there's back to this whole theme that we started with in terms of longevity. I mean, it's the totality of all the little steps that we make that get us to our end destination for however many years you want to live. It's not a single magic pill.
Well, Dr. William Li, I love being in your presence. I love being the recipient of your enthusiasm and your knowledge. You've helped me understand so many new, interesting concepts, and I can't wait to see what you're cooking up next. But thanks for being here with me and with us, and I hope you'll come back.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more of my weekly musings, along with ad-free episodes and live stream conversations, head over to my Substack at jeffkrasno.substack.com. I also want to let you know about our course platform over on Commune, which contains over 3,000 lessons and practices from the world's leading integrative medicine doctors, health experts, and yoga, fitness, and mindfulness teachers. It's a living library for holistic well-being. And you can try it for free for 14 days at onecommune.com/try commune. As a reminder, the audio version of my new book, Good Stress, is available on Audible, and you can listen to it for free as part of your premium Spotify membership. And if you prefer the old school analog option, well, you can pick up a dusty old scroll at goodstress.com and get over $900 worth of bonus courses from some of my biggest influences, including Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Zach Bush, and Dr. Gabor Mate. As always, feel free to reach out to me with comments, questions, or criticism of the constructive variety at jeffk@onecommune.com. Okay, that's all from the Commune for today. My name is Jeff Krasno, and I am here for you.